My principal ordered the whole school to stay seated through an earthquake, calling it a prank while gas leaked under our door. So I led everyone out and watched him march back inside seconds before the building collapsed on him. Our school sits on a fault line, which is why we drill twice a year and why every classroom has a laminated card on the wall telling you exactly what to do. On the day it happened, the alarm went off in the middle of fourth period, that loud rising tone that means leave now, the one you only ever hear in drills. Before any of us could even stand up, the principal, Mr. Vance, came over the ceiling speaker. Everyone stay exactly where you are. I know precisely what is going on. Some clever student decided it would be funny to set off the alarm and skip the rest of class. It is not going to work. Anyone in the hallway today is suspended. No exceptions. My teacher, Ms. Doyle, looked up at the speaker and then back at us. You could tell she did not like it. He must be right, she said quietly, almost to herself. Nobody would set that off as a joke. A few seconds later, the floor started to roll. This was not a little wobble. The whole room moved like a boat. The windows shook in their frames. A tall bookshelf in the back tipped over onto an empty desk, and the books inside it slid across the carpet in a long fan. Ms. Doyle's training took over. Under your desks, hands over your heads now. We all dove under, and I held the leg of my desk while the building groaned around us. It felt like it lasted forever. When the shaking finally stopped, I crawled out and looked around the room. A long crack had split the wall above the whiteboard, from the ceiling all the way to the floor, with the white paint peeled back from the edges of it. Broken ceiling tiles covered the carpet. The door frame had bent so far the door would not sit straight in it anymore. My friend Omar pointed at the window in the door. Out in the hall, a whole stretch of ceiling had come down, and across the corridor, other classes were at their doors trying to decide if they could leave. Then Mr. Vance came back on the speaker, and his voice had not changed one bit. Settle down, all of you. That was a minor tremor and nothing more. I want every student seated and silent. We do not abandon our classrooms over a little shaking and a fake alarm. I have run this building for 12 years, and I know a stunt when I see one. Stay where you are. I stared up at the speaker. Ms. Doyle, the wall is cracked open. We have to get to the field. She bit her lip and kept looking at the crack. Mr. Vance said to stay put. If I walk you all out and he turns out to be right, that is my job gone. That was the moment I smelled it. A sharp, rotten egg stink was sliding in under the bent door. The smell they teach you about in chemistry. The smell that means a gas line has broken close by. My stomach dropped. Gas, a building full of cracks, aftershocks on the way, and a man on the speaker ordering 100 kids to sit still and wait. I got to my feet. That is gas. Everybody up. We are leaving this room right now. Omar stood up beside me, and a couple of kids near the window started shoving their chairs back. Ms. Doyle held out her hand. He will suspend every one of you. Please, just give it another minute. There is no minute, I told her. You can suspend me out on the field, Mr. Vance, but I am not sitting in here to find out you were wrong. With that, I went to the bent door and shoved it open with my shoulder. The smell hit harder in the hall. A chunk of fallen ceiling was blocking half the corridor, so I waved everyone toward the far stairwell instead of the main stairs. This way, stay low, do not run. Doors up and down the hall started opening as other kids saw us moving, and a few teachers stepped out, glancing from us to the ceiling speaker like they could not decide who to obey. A small kid from a younger grade stood frozen in the hall with his hands clamped over his ears, so I grabbed his sleeve and pulled him along with us. We made it down the stairwell and out the front doors onto the field right as the first aftershock hit. The ground jumped hard under our feet, and from inside the building came the sound of glass shattering. By then, half the school was pouring out behind us, taking the same path. Mr. Vance was still inside. When a teacher finally walked him out, he came marching across the grass with a red face and a notepad. Who authorized this? I gave a direct order over the speaker. Every single one of you is looking at a suspension for walking out. Fire trucks and a gas company truck were already at the curb. A couple of firefighters went toward the building with a meter, and when they came back, the one in charge, Captain Boyd, would not even let Mr. Vance finish talking. There was a broken gas main right under the building, he said. The level inside was already past dangerous, and with that cracked support wall, one strong aftershock could have dropped part of the wing on anyone still inside. He red-tagged the whole building right there, which meant not one person was getting back through those doors. Mr. Vance shoved past Boyd, snapped that no fireman was red-tagging his building over a smell, and marched back through the front doors just as the ground started to roll a second time. The wall above the entrance let out a deep grinding crack, dust pouring down over him, and he froze in the doorway with half the school screaming his name across the grass. Captain Boyd was already sprinting toward him. Dust poured off the front of the building in sheets, and chunks of brick broke loose and dropped onto the front steps. I took 3 steps toward the doors without thinking, and Omar grabbed my arm hard and pulled me back. Don't. You got everybody out. You are not going back in for him. I stopped. Mr. Vance was standing in the doorway with one hand on the frame, his head tilted up at the crack spreading across the wall above him. The crack was moving. I could see it from 50 feet away, branching out like a tree growing in fast forward. For the first time since any of this started, he looked like he finally understood what he had walked into. Boyd hit the steps at a full run. He grabbed Mr. Vance by the back of his suit jacket with both hands and yanked him backward, dragging him down the steps so hard that Mr. Vance's feet barely touched the ground. They cleared the last step and hit the grass together just as a whole slab of concrete above the door broke loose and crashed onto the exact spot where Mr. Vance had been standing half a second before. The sound was like a car hitting a wall. Dust and broken concrete sprayed across the walkway and out onto the grass. Boyd and Mr. Vance were tangled up on the lawn about 10 feet from the steps, and for a long moment, nobody on that field moved or said a word. I think every single one of us was holding our breath. Then Mr. Vance moved. He did not lie there shaking. He did not grab Boyd's hand and say thank you. He shoved Boyd's hands off of him like Boyd was the problem. He got his legs under him and staggered up, swaying a little, and he turned toward the students on the field. His face was white with dust. There was a cut above his right eye bleeding down the side of his face and a thin red line through all that gray powder. His voice was shaking when he opened his mouth, but it was not shaking because he was scared. It was shaking because he was mad. He lifted his arm and pointed his finger straight at me. You, he said, and his voice cracked on the word. You did this. You turned my entire school against me. me. I want his name, I want his parents' number, and I want him off this campus today. I just stood there. The building he had just been dragged out of was groaning behind him, and this man was pointing at me like I was the one who cracked the gas line. Ms. Doyle put her hand over her mouth. Omar said it so quiet that only I could hear. He is actually blaming you. The building almost fell on him, and he is blaming you. Captain Boyd stepped between Mr. Vance and the rest of us. Sir, you need to sit down and let the paramedics look at that cut, he said, calm, but with nothing friendly in it. You just walked into a building I condemned 60 seconds ago. That is not this kid's fault. Mr. Vance did not sit down. He pulled his phone out of his pocket and started calling someone, pacing back and forth on the grass with his free hand balled into a fist. I could hear pieces of the call. Something about insubordination. Something about lawsuits. I waited to feel something big. What I felt was hollow. This man had been willing to let 100 kids sit in a building full of gas rather than admit he made the wrong call. And even after being dragged out from under a falling wall, he had not changed his mind. He still thought he was right. He still thought I was the problem. A few seconds later, he was using the formal voice parents heard, the one that made everything sound reasonable. A group of students pulled the alarm manually, he said into the phone. They used the confusion from the tremor to organize an unauthorized evacuation. It caused a stampede in the hallways, and the structural damage you are going to see in the reports is a direct result of that panic. He was not just bending the truth, he was building a different story. In his version, there was no gas leak that mattered, no cracked wall he ignored, just a prank that broke the building. He paused, listened, then said, I want an emergency disciplinary hearing scheduled before the end of the week. Omar pulled me a few steps away. He is getting ahead of this. If the district hears his version first, they are going to believe the principal over a student. You know how this works. I knew. Mr. Vance had 12 years of relationships in the district. He knew the right tone, the right words. I was 15, with the truth and a hallway full of rubble, and that might not be enough if he got to tell his story first. I looked across the field. Boyd's crew was pulling yellow tape off big rolls and stringing it around the building perimeter. I walked over. When Boyd saw me, he stopped what he was doing and looked at me like he was deciding something. Then he nodded. Tell me exactly what you found in there, I said. The gas levels, the wall damage, all of it. The gas reading inside your wing was 4 times the evacuation threshold, he said straight, no softening, like he was talking to another adult. That cracked support wall was already shifting before the second aftershock. If those kids had stayed in their classrooms another 10 minutes, we would be pulling them out of rubble right now. I am putting all of that in my incident report. It will be filed with the city tonight. 4 times, 10 minutes. I let those numbers sit in my head. 10 minutes was nothing. 10 minutes was Mr. Vance giving one more speech, Ms. Doyle waiting 1 more minute like she had asked, me sitting back down because the principal told me to. Can the school district see that report? Anyone can request it. Public record. I thanked him and turned back toward the field. The fire report was real. Numbers, official readings, a captain's signature. Mr. Vance could tell the district whatever story he wanted, but he could not argue with a gas meter. But I needed more than that. I needed someone from inside that classroom. I needed Ms. Doyle. I found her at the edge of the field, arms crossed tight, staring at the doorway where the concrete had come down. When I walked up, she turned to me, and I could see she had been crying. I told her what Boyd had said, the gas levels, the wall, the 10 minutes. Her face went pale when I said the 10 minutes part. I need you to write down everything you remember from inside that classroom, I said. Every word Mr. Vance said over the speaker. The crack, the smell, the moment you told us to stay because you were afraid of losing your job, all of it. She was quiet a long time. Writing it down meant making it official. It also meant putting her name on the moment she almost kept us in that room. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a notebook and a pen, sat down on the grass, and opened to a blank page. I owe your class this, she said. I owe you this. She started writing. Her hand was shaking a little, but she did not stop. I heard car doors slamming. Parents were arriving, coming through the gates fast, scanning for their own kids. I saw my mom before she saw me. She came through the gate at a full run, her purse swinging off her shoulder, and when she spotted me, she covered the distance in about 5 seconds and grabbed my face with both hands, turning it side to side. Are you hurt? Are you okay? What happened? I told her. All of it. The speaker calling it a prank. The order to stay. The gas smell. The cracked wall. Me standing up. Vance walking back inside. The doorway coming down. Her face went from relief to something hard and sharp. He told you to stay inside? With gas leaking? She looked across the field at Mr. Vance, still pacing, still on his phone. Where is this man's supervisor? Who is above him? I told her Mr. And Vance was already calling the district to blame the students, that he wanted a disciplinary hearing before the end of the week. Her jaw set. She pulled her own phone out of her purse. Then we call them too, tonight, before he buries this. 2 days later, I was sitting in a conference room at the district office with my mom beside me, and I felt like I was the one on trial. There was a long table in the middle with chairs on both sides, and across from us sat the superintendent and 2 board members. And then there was Mr. Vance, at the far end in a clean dark blue suit I had never seen before, the cut above his eye covered with a neat skin-colored bandage. His hair was combed, his hands were folded on top of a printed statement lined up perfectly with the edge of the table. He looked like a completely different man from the one Boyd had dragged out of that doorway. He had spent 2 days getting ready for this. He did not look at me when I sat down. He did not look at my mom. He looked at the superintendent like they were old friends. He spoke first, in a calm voice, nothing like the one from the speaker. He said I had a history of challenging authority. He said the alarm had been triggered manually. He said the evacuation I led was chaotic, that kids could have been trampled in the stairwell, that the panic I caused was what put people at risk. Then he looked down at his printed statement and read from it. I have given 12 years to that school. I know every pipe, every wall, every exit. I made the call I believed was safest, and this student undermined it. The room was tilting toward him. I could feel it. The 2 board members were doing those small nods people do when they think they are hearing something reasonable. The one with glasses and a lanyard leaned toward him. Mr. Vance, you obviously care deeply about your students' safety. My mom squeezed my hand under the table. Her arm was shaking against mine, but her face was still. We had a plan. The superintendent turned to me and asked if I had anything to say. I asked to speak. My voice came out steadier than I expected. I just told them what happened, the way I would tell a friend. I described the crack that split the wall above above the whiteboard, running from the ceiling all the way down. I described the fallen ceiling in the hallway, the chunks of tile and drywall blocking the corridor. I described the gas smell sliding in under the bent door, that sharp rotten egg stink you cannot mistake for anything else. And then I repeated Mr. Vance's exact words from the speaker, the ones about a prank, the ones about suspension, the ones about sitting down and staying quiet. You do not forget what someone tells you in a room that smells like gas. Then I said the only thing I had left. I am not a hero. I was scared, but I could smell gas and the wall was cracked open and he told us to sit down, so I stood up. The room got quiet. The board member who had been leaning back leaned forward. The woman with the lanyard glanced at him and her face was not as friendly as before. Mr. Vance cut in. This is exactly what I mean. He is dramatic. He is exaggerating. The building had minor cosmetic damage. The superintendent held up his hand, slow and flat, the kind of gesture that means stop. Is there any independent documentation? He asked. He was looking at me. My mom reached down beside her chair and picked up a plain folder. She slid it across the table without a word. He opened it. On top was Captain Boyd's official incident report on department letterhead, signed at the bottom. It listed the gas readings, 4 times the evacuation threshold. It described the structural failure in the support wall. It listed the red tag and the reason for it. It included a diagram of the support wall crack with measurements, the gas meter readings logged minute by minute over the first hour on scene, and a section labeled recommended findings, in which Boyd had written that anyone still inside the wing past the second tremor would not have survived a third. Under that was Ms. Doyle's written account, signed and dated in her own handwriting, describing every single word Mr. Vance said over the speaker. Every minute we were kept inside after the shaking stopped, and the moment she told us to wait because she was afraid of losing her job if she went against his orders. The superintendent picked up Boyd's report and started reading. The 2 board members leaned in from either side. I watched Mr. Vance. The moment he saw what was inside that folder, something flickered across his face. His eyes went from the folder to me and back to the folder. His mouth opened a little. He did not know about either document. He had not planned for this. For 2 days he had been building his version, and not once had it crossed his mind that someone might have written down the truth and signed their name to it. He tried to recover. He sat up straighter and put his hands flat on the table. That firefighter was on scene for 5 minutes. I have been in that building for 12 years. He does not know what he is talking about. But his voice was louder than it needed to be, and the volume gave him away. The board members were not looking at him anymore. They were reading. The superintendent finished the first page, turned to the second, then stopped. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, the way someone talks when they have read something that does not need any extra words around it. Mr. Vance, the gas concentration listed here is 4 times the evacuation threshold. You told students to remain seated. Mr. Vance opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. The superintendent turned toward the door. Ms. Doyle, would you come in, please? The door opened and Ms. Doyle walked in, hands clenched in front of her. She sat down at the end of the table, and she did not look at Mr. Vance, not once. She kept her eyes on the notebook in front of her, the same notebook she had been writing in on the grass 2 days ago. When the superintendent asked her to read her account, she opened it and started. She read the timeline she had written down on the grass. The alarm at 10:58. Mr. Vance's first speaker instruction at 10:59. The first tremor at 11:01. The second instruction at 11:04, after the wall had already cracked. The gas smell at 11:06. Then she set the notebook flat on the table. Her voice was thin but steady until she got to the part about herself. Then it cracked. I knew it was wrong, she said, and she had to stop and swallow before she could keep going. I could smell the gas and I told them to wait, because he said he would fire anyone who moved. She looked up from the notebook then, not at Mr. Vance, at the board members. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set. That boy did what I should have done. He stood up when I would not. Mr. Vance leaned forward, fingers pressing into the edge of the table hard enough to turn white at the tips. Ms. Doyle, he said, using that disappointed teacher voice. I have supported you since your first day. Do not sit here and throw me under the bus because you are embarrassed. She turned to face him for the first time since she walked in. Whatever he saw in her face made him lean back just slightly, just enough for me to notice. You are not listening, she said. You have never listened. You almost killed 30 children because you could not stand the idea that a 15-year-old was right and you were wrong. Nobody breathed. I could hear the hum of the air vent above us. The superintendent set the report down slowly, placed both hands flat on the table, and turned to the 2 board members beside him. They looked at each other, and something passed between them that did not need words. Then he turned to Mr. Vance. Based on the fire department's incident report, Miss Doyle's testimony, and your own admission that you ordered students to remain in a building during a seismic event and gas leak, I am placing you on immediate unpaid suspension pending a full investigation. You are not to contact any students, any staff, or set foot on any district property until further notice. Mr. Vance stood up so fast his chair rocked backward. You cannot do this. I kept that school running. I kept order when everyone else panicked. This boy and this teacher are lying to save themselves. The superintendent did not raise his voice. You walked back into a condemned building after a fire captain told you not to. That is not in dispute. That is on video from 3 parents' phones. Sit down, Mr. Vance. He did not sit down. He stood there breathing hard, then picked up his printed statement, the one with every careful word and every rehearsed line, and held it at his side like it did not matter anymore. He looked at me, right at me. You think you won something today? You have no idea what you started. Then he walked out. He did not slam the door. He pulled it shut behind him with a quiet click, and somehow that was worse than if he had slammed it. A week later, I walked past the school, where Mr. Vance's name had been on the directory, 4 bolt holes. I got on the bus.